You're watching Sitka Community TV. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like what you see.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional First People of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on Ngit Ani. Sarah, roll call, please.
Mr. Roger?
Here.
Ms. Priesta?
Here.
Mr. Christensen?
Here.
Mr. Pike?
Here.
Ms. Carlson?
Here.
And Mayor Eisenbeis and Ms. Duncan are absent this evening.
Okay, thank you. That moves us to correspondence and agenda changes. Do we have any of those, Sarah? Okay. There are no ceremonial matters. This moves us to special reports. Are there any government to government? I believe we have Woody calling. Yes, Woody.
Hello?
Hi, Woody. It's Sarah calling from the Assembly meeting. We are ready for your report.
Hey, this is Sarah. Mayor and fellow members, I just have a brief report. We didn't meet at our first regular council meeting of the month. So we had a brief meeting last Wednesday, April 19th, and I'll just go through the action items. We went through enrollment resolutions. The council approved a recommendation by the Natural Resources Committee to work directly within Pownell regarding the rock wall, identified in the phase 2 of the Seawalk assessment. And the council approved the amended MOU between STA and Taylor White and the University of California, Santa Cruz. Last but not least, the council appointed a member to the Bureau Board of Commissioners. That's it. That's my brief report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Woody. Okay, this moves us to municipal boards, commissions, and committees. Municipal departments. School district. Is there anyone from the school district? Students and guests. Okay. Now we move to persons to be heard. This is public participation on any item off the agenda. All public testimony is not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual.
Valerie Nelson for the record. Upon returning to Sitka last week, I read the 2 positions you control earned wage increases of over 5% and was a bit disheartened. It should be noted that when I voted in favor of terminating our previous administrator, it was because he was not following the laws of our community and I believe not credible, and I believe that that much of a raise is inappropriate. In the current administrator's comments to you, he stated he always strives to approach every day's work with his personal values of service, honesty, and respect. I sure don't get that respect. I believe he owes an apology to all of the people that were addressed in his November 17, 2022 email that was also blind copied to all of you, titled Underground Conduit Installation, as well as others that had concerns about a recently departed electrical employee. In his 3rd paragraph of that email, he stated, The two previous general foremen were the highest paid city employees in city history, while the departments were fully staffed and contractors were supposedly allowed to do more work, and still hold that record. He went on to state, "I'm not oblivious to the notion that some previous employees may be driving some of these complaints. I never heard any previous city employees doing it. I went because businessmen asked me to." For the record, the electrical department was not fully staffed, as the electrical director was gone for at least 9 months, and one of those foremen was covering that position as well as being on call 24/7 to keep the lights on, and there were several other ongoing projects, for example, Blue Lake expansion and Marine Street substation. It should be called to your attention that there has always been a jealousy between salaried and hourly employees, and to make a statement like that, it should be delineated how much overtime was involved. Once again, we are facing user fee increases for every service the city has a hand in. When we have people in supervisory positions lacking in integrity, it causes morale to suffer. I've been told there is or was an investigation into billings that were made whereby a groundsman, we don't even have one on the chart, was billed out at a journeyman wage. We need to hire competent and honest people that will give a full day of work for great wages and benefits that many city employees receive. Most people hesitate to speak their concerns because, like me, they are vilified by some in administration and dealt with harassment or vindictiveness. It's time that you realize that non-city employees are part of this community also, and are being forced out of a town they've called home for generations due to the extremely high costs associated with trying to live here. In closing, I'll be sending all of you, as well as all of those referenced in the November email, an explanation of my thoughts on the matter and how I think things can improve. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else or persons to be heard?
Well, good evening. My name is Richard Ween, and I'd like to say that the first vote came in today, 2,200 people, and so, as they say, let the games begin, because it's really going to ramp up, and it'll be very interesting to watch. One of the things I noticed when I walked out here were the buses, and so what I did was I stood behind one of them and took some really deep breaths, a couple of breaths, just to remind me of being stuck in a Lincoln Tunnel during rush hour, because it just is, I just happen to say I love the smell of diesel in the morning, to paraphrase a movie that I hope a couple of you have seen. One of the important things I'd like to talk about tonight is that Sitka presented a Sitka Economic Report, and that was on April 20th. There are a couple of numbers that I'd like to highlight. One, these numbers are what help us see how our community is changing. The report, though I found was interesting, was kind of like a Chinese dinner. I felt hungry afterwards, and the report was rather slender. We're very happy to spend $750,000 for a land report, but we're not really interested in knowing exactly what the heck is going on with our population and its movements. It affects the school, it affects how housing is utilized, how people live here, etc. Some of the notions that were brought up were population. Since 1992 to now, we've had an 8% decline, and that has been something that has been consistent. Over a 10-year period, we lost 886 people, 1 year, 78. Where do these people go? Well, 74% go out of state, 7% go to Juneau, 6% go to Anchorage. Now, if we look at births and deaths, we see that there were 85 births last year and about 50 deaths, so it kind of equalizes out. The other aspect is if you look at with population age cohorts, we have an increase from 2013 to 2022 of 33% of those 65% and 65 and older, and between 20 and 64, which is the working age, we have minus 13%, and from 0 to 19, we have 18% down. That sounds like it would affect the school. But the key number here that I'd like to report on is called worker residency. And our worker, meaning local residents who are part of the workforce, is only 50%, 57% of the total, and this has been declining. And to me, this is a hallmark of seasonalization. And when we seasonalize, it is going to affect everything we have, and the bottom line is, it will herald the destruction of Sitka for the future.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else for persons to be heard? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. So we're moving to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of the minutes from the April 6th and April 11th assembly meetings, and A and B, approve a liquor license renewal application for Trinity Business Services LLC, doing business as Halibut Point Crab and Brew.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Sarah, we don't take public comment for this, right? Okay. Okay, so public comment on the consent agenda.
Motion to take public comment. I'd like to comment on B, which is the liquor license transfer. I think that the Halibut Point Crab and Brew, I think they may want to stay open for extended periods of time, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity with the transfer to give it from Halibut Point Crab and Brew to the Marina Grill, both of them who I wish great success, especially since the opening of the season. So this is a wonderful opportunity for the individuals involved, because we know you make money on selling alcohol. And so I hope that this will help their bottom lines, and I hope we will pass this.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else for public comment on this item? Seeing none? Sir?
Okay, on the motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of items A and B, Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
And Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, this moves us on to board, commissions, and committee appointments.
I move to reappoint Shannon Freitas to a 3-year term, the Local Emergency Planning Committee, under Category 2, Law Enforcement, Civil Defense, Firefighting, First Aid, Local, Environmental, Hospital, and Transportation Personnel.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any public comment on this?
As with anyone who, my name is Richard Wien, and as for anybody who wishes to serve the community, I applaud them. And Shannon Freitas is an individual who is on the Local Emergency Planning Commission. The important thing about that is it is a very important commission, which I think is underrated. It has some, in my past attendance there, some incredible conversations, and Shannon Freitas is a very important part because she is Director of Safety at Search, and they have an enormous responsibility, and I believe that they are kind of like a permanent part of the Local Emergency Planning Commission, and I'd like to thank her for stepping up. She has a lot of experience, and especially when it truly is an emergency, I know that her participation will be much welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Any discussion? Okay, Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve Ms. Freitas to a term on the Local Emergency Planning Commission, Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
and Mr. Pike.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 on item C.
Okay. On to item D, the exciting one. So this is item D, appoint tourism task force members, excuse me. So Sarah's laid out a kind of way we're going to go about doing this. So the first part, I'm just going to explain. Pursuant to Resolution 2023-11, the task force shall consist of 9 representatives. By the way, for those who are listening, the tourism task force was established in March, I believe, for a variety of reasons that's listed in your packet, but to basically examine tourism in Sitka. And I think from what I've heard from a lot of people is to kind of find that spot and that benefits us, but doesn't go overboard. And so they're gonna have a big job ahead of them. But according to Resolution 2023-11, we have representatives from Tribe of Alaska, Ports and Harbor Commission, Sustainability Commission, Downtown Business Corridor, Business in General, Tours and Attractions, Sitka Cruise Terminal, and Community at Large. It's 2 seats. So we're on step 2. So you all have those. Somebody want to make that motion?
Sure. These are the, I guess, pre-appointed seats or whatever, or the nominated seats. So I move to approve Camille Ferguson to the Sitka Tribe of Alaska seat, Scott Wagner to the Ports and Harbors Commission seat, Barbara Bingham to the Sustainability Commission seat, Jeremy Plank to the Tours and Attractions seat, and Chris McGraw to the Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal seat.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Public comment?
My name is Richard Lean, and the Tourist Task Force does have a very, say, important role potentially, as long as it doesn't become a fait accompli. So these are the pre-approved, which in essence is saying that there was only one person applying per se. And so I can pretty much guess what individuals on this list will be going to be promoting. So I wish them well, but I feel like I've kind of seen the answers to the tests, so I feel like I'm cheating here, but good luck to them.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, back to the assembly for discussion.
Yeah, I just think it's important to note that these were all nominated by their respective organizations. This isn't just the one person we would set it up, so they nominated, we approve it, but so it's not, they were all nominated by, like I say, their respective organizations.
Thank you. Yes, and to clarify, this was part of the ordinance or the resolution that they put those recommendations. We have the final approval, so these are kind of set. I have no problem with any of these. Anyone else have any other comment?
Just to note that the tourism and attraction seat was open to all. It was just there was one applicant. So that's the kind of direct appointment there. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Anyone else? Chris? Okay. Sarah?
All right, so on the motion to appoint Camille Ferguson to the Sitka Tribe of Alaska seat, Scott Wagner to the Port and Harbors Commission seat, Barbara Bingham to the Sustainability Commission seat, Jeremy Plank to the Tours and Attractions seat, and Chris McGraw to the Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal seat. Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
And Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0.
Okay, this brings us to nominations for business in general. Get a motion for it.
All right. I nominate Cambria Holmes, Holly Reeder, and Noah Rogers for the business and general seat.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can I have, opening it for public comment? Dr. Wayne?
I'm sorry, my name is Richard Ween, and I need a bit of an explanation. Were these the only 3 that applied for this, or were there other individuals?
Well, there's no back and forth.
I
You can
know.
ask your questions and then...
Yeah, every question I ask is rhetorical.
Okay.
Just as if I say I love you, it's platonic. Okay. And so these are individuals which I hope that will do the good job. And I'm sorry I didn't know that this is the way it was going to go. So good luck to them, and I may be back at Persons to be Heard at the end to make a comment on that. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Ready from here?
What's up?
Ready from here?
Okay, we have one hand up. So this brings it back to the assembly. So yeah, if anyone wants to bring an applicant up, please.
Yeah, I would love to hear from any of the applicants that want to speak. Don't have to. Okay.
And while the applicants are coming forward, I would clarify that there was 3 individuals that applied for this one seat.
Thank you.
Just push the button down the front.
This guy.
Thank you.
My name is Cambria Holmes, and I own Campfire Kitchen. I moved here almost 3 years ago after owning 2 restaurants in Haines, Alaska. I lived there for about a decade, and I feel very passionate about this subject because living in Haines, we had very little cruise ship tourism, and I longed for more of it. But I also was neighbors with Skagway, and I would look over there and want to cry because it was, everything's owned by the cruise ships. It was just polar opposites, and I felt like when I moved to Sitka, it had a really nice balance to it, and I just want that to stay this. I want to find a good balance where Sitka benefits, money can come and it can stay, and we can not be destroyed by turning into Skagway Part 2. I guess that sums it up.
Did anyone on members have any questions? Okay, thank you. So are the other 2 applicants here? If so, would they like to speak? Sorry, no, you're not on there.
I was just going to point out the tour ship's until 7, so.
Thank you. So no one else is here, so this is our, so this is, are we going to discuss now, or will we make our votes first?
You can discuss, and then when you're finished, I'll call each of your names, and then we'll indicate the individual, the applicant of your choice. To be appointed, an applicant must receive at least 4 votes.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say. I mean, everybody who was applied will definitely qualify. I have had some interactions with Holly in her day job, and found her to be very easy to work with and level-headed. That for what it's worth. But I don't think we would be losing out with any of these, and I appreciate having these 3 people put their name forward. And all I can say, honestly, for the rest of the night, we're obviously not going to be able to pick everybody, but there will be, as all of our commissions, vacancies popping up, I suspect, pretty regularly. So I hope that whomever doesn't get put on, remember, members always said nice things about him, and maybe he could be willing to come do it and try again. Anyway, that's all I have.
Thanks. Anyone else?
each Fairleigh, Cambria, Holly, and Nora would be, an asset to the group. It's going to be, just an idea of the overall balance. And I think we're gonna get a good group regardless of who we choose to be.
Thank you.
I think I'll echo towards comments too. I want to thank everybody for applying and encourage people to stay involved with other things if they don't think the seat here is obviously not everyone will. And I agree. I think looking at the list, I don't think we go wrong with virtually any of these people. So I think that speaks well to the strength of our community.
Chris, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was really happy with the applicants that we got. Each of these three, I think, would bring something unique and beneficial to the task force. Honestly, I'm still having a hard time deciding which one. But yeah, great applicants, and I just want to thank these three for applying. Any of them deserve to be on here, I think.
Okay, thank you. I don't really have anything to say. I kind of ditto what's been said. So, Sarah, you want to walk us through this now?
Sure. So when I call your name, if you'll take the individual of your choice.
And just to be clear, we have to have 4 votes, right?
That's correct. And yes, 4 votes, and this is for the business in general seat. So the nominations are Cambria Holmes, Holly Reeder, and Noah Rogers.
Is there any limit in rounds that we
No.
can go?
If we go past 3, I'm going to need a little bit of a break to readjust my voting. All right. Ms. Carlson.
Cambria Holmes.
Mr. Yestad?
Cambria Holmes.
Mr. Mosier?
Cambria Holmes.
Mr. Pike?
Cambria Holmes.
And Mr. Christensen.
Cambria Holmes.
All right. Cambria Holmes is appointed.
Great. Wonderful. Congratulations. Okay, so now we're going to nominations for Downtown Business Corridor. Can I get a motion?
All right. I nominate James Michener and Shirley E. Robards for the Downtown Business Corridor seat.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved.
You guys get the next one, okay?
It's been moved and seconded. Public comment for this item?
I hesitate to say anything good or bad about anyone because I know I'm viewed in a negative light here, but I know both Shirley and James, and I think either one of them would be an excellent choice, and I'm glad that they put their name forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Richard Ween, and I know this may be the kiss of death, but I love Shirley Robards, and I'm glad there are only 2 candidates here. And I think that her stature in the town, her length of time in the town, which is forever, and the fact that she's a businesswoman of just incomparable ability to have lasted in these changing environments in Sitka. And the fact that they're there virtually every day and they see what's going on the street. She just brings an enormous amount of knowledge to the table, which I don't think virtually anyone in Sitka can match. And so, on Mr. Michener, if I have a choice between 2, I'm afraid to say it's Shirley, even though they're both well qualified.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, back to the table.
I would, again, sorry. Oh, sorry, Shirley.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see you, Shirley. Please.
Good evening. My name is Shirley Robards, a 65-year.
Shirley, can you push that?
Push the button.
Yeah.
Here. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm a 65-year-old resident of Sitka, a 40-year business person on Lincoln Street. We started down at 202 Lincoln Street, then at 422, and now we're at 342. So we've been in business for 40 years next month, so we'll be celebrating next month. And I'm really interested in what's going on in Sitka. Have been for years. I was on Police Standards Council for the state of Alaska. I was on the Police Standard here in Sitka. I've been a lot of different things I haven't done lately, but I'm getting up there in years. But I think that I have a lot of knowledge about Sitka. So I'll just put my 2 cents in, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, back to the table.
Jim's on.
Oh, sorry. Please.
Good evening, Commissioner. I just want to put myself up here to open myself to questions from the Assembly.
We'll get to that. We're just public comment now.
Very
We'll
good.
go. Okay, anyone else for public comment on this item? Okay. Assembly?
Yeah, again, we're, kind of a no-lose situation here, which is nice. On one hand, it makes it harder. On another, I've known both for years, and I honestly, I have a pretty idea who I'm going to vote for, but I'm not going to say right now because I think this is one where it's our own choice, and the like I said, this is a no-lose. So I think we're lucky.
Anyone else?
Heather can if you want to ask questions.
Again, Commissioner, just like to present myself if you have any questions for me.
Did you have questions?
Hi. Thank you for your letter of interest. It really laid out, I think, what your goals, you talk about infrastructure, you talk about balance, earnest is a good word to throw in when looking at something as vital of what our tourism areas can be. With this seat being, representing the downtown business corridor, what's your kind of general relationship like with your neighbors and business?
Great relationship. I think anyone we don't get along with is support, and we feel supported by them, surely included. We're next door neighbors, we have a great relationship, and I think she would be a great person for this job, and I think I could be too, so I don't think you can go wrong.
Because it is a seat to represent a body of people. I think it's a very valid and important thing that you would share your opinion and also go back to your group and share their overall thoughts too. So thank you for that. It's helpful.
Did anyone else have a question? Any questions for James? No? Okay, thank you. And Shirley, if you'd like to come up and speak again, because that was just personal spirit, there was no back and forth. If you'd like to come back up and say something, you can.
You want to ask me questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Shirley? Okay.
The refrigerator's going on.
Did you want to ask her?
Yeah. Shirley, I would like to ask you the same question.
Okay.
Congratulations, you're 40 years in business. That's excellent. What is your relationship like with the other Lincoln Street businesses?
We wait on them every day, and we know everybody, and I belong to the Elks and the Moose, and so we're pretty involved in in Sitka. I enjoy it. I would recommend it to everybody. Everybody that comes in the store says it's the only place to raise a kid. Because my son, at 20 years old, started that business himself, not us. We helped him by working with him, but we never had to give him any money to do it or anything. Nobody believes it. They say, oh yeah, it's yours, isn't it? And I said, no, it isn't. My husband worked at the pulp mill for 37 years, and I worked at different places, but when he had the store, then I went to work for him. But I've been up and down that street many, many, many times, and I think I get along with everybody, but you never know.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Shirley? Okay, thank you. Okay. Discussion on this in the assembly?
I go back to what I said before, which is that I think, and as other people have said here too, I don't think we go along with either candidate. I think we're very lucky to be in this circumstance as we go through this process. So I want to thank everybody and hope that you stay involved in other things if you don't get this.
I would agree with that sentiment. Okay, Sarah, you want to take us through this thing?
All right, so when I call your name, if you'll state your choice of applicant, Mr. Mosher,
Shirley Robart.
Mr. Yestad,
James Mitchell.
Mr. Pike,
James Commissioner.
Ms. Carlson,
Jim Mitchell.
and Mr. Christensen.
Commissioner.
All right, Jim Mitchner is appointed.
Okay, thank you. So now to the next one, nominations for, this will be the last item, and then we will be done with this. We're going to have nominations for 2 community at-large seats. Can I have a motion?
I nominate Larry Edwards, Phyllis Hackett, Sherry Jacobs, Rich McClear, Ronald Rita, and Ronald West for the 2 community at-large seats.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Anyone like to speak on this one?
Good evening, Richard Green. When this was coming up during the assembly, I always felt that community at large should have a larger number than 2, because this community is large, and therefore I thought it needed more than 2 voices in order to get that diversity of opinion from the community. If I were you, there are 6 on there, I would nominate them all and let them all sit and give their opinions. But you will do as you do, and I don't dare say who I would pick, because I truly believe that it would be the opposite. So I wish good luck to all of them. There are a lot of wonderfully qualified individuals, and like I said, the voice of the community, the Vox Popular, is important, and I don't think 2 can do it, but you are the Assembly and the governing body. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Anyone else to speak on these?
So I'm Barbara Bingham, and I'm supporting Larry Edwards for one of the at-large seats on the task force. And I've had the opportunity to work with Larry over the last year and a half on a number of issues concerning a sustainable future for Sitka and community welfare. And Larry approaches problems with thorough research and careful analysis. He's calm and straightforward when working with others. And I believe the task force and ultimately our community will greatly benefit from Larry's intelligence and facility in presenting pertinent facts and figures in clear and understandable formats as the quest for the best solutions to managing tourism in Sitka unfolds. And you may have reached that same opinion by looking at his application and his letter of interest. But I wanted to say that I've worked with him firsthand and believe him to be a very competent person. Thank you.
people gathered here. My name is Eric Jordan, and I actually have struggled with this. I think Dr. Ween has a great idea. I think you ought to appoint all those people. I know all of them, and I know some really well. And I came here to speak for my friend Larry Edwards, who I've worked with since the 70s. But as I looked at the list, I'm friends with Rich and Phyllis, and they're wonderful applicants. And so I just want to say something about Larry. I served on boards and part of the activism with Larry, and he brings a unique voice, and nobody that I've ever met walks his talk quite like Larry does, and he really adds to the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone else like to speak?
I assume this is already getting the red lights on. My name's Ron Retta. Probably nobody here knows me. I lived here through the 90s and into the early aughts, and I just moved back last year. The reason why I put my name in the hat here is to make sure that somebody who's lived here, trailer parks, harbor, crashing on couches, and now I've come here back under different circumstances, so I know what it's like to live in Sitka okay and not so okay. And I would just like to be a voice on this task force that, I don't know, maybe takes the perspective of people that don't always get their voice heard here, whether their choice or not, but that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Phyllis Hackett, and I've been in Sitka for right around 50 years now. Came as a young person, and I've worked a lot of different jobs. I've met a lot of people over the years, and I love Sitka, obviously, or I wouldn't still be here. I served for almost 7 years on the assembly, and I understand the needs of the city and the workings of the city and how things go and how they don't go. I have a good understanding of the economics of the city and how important this sector is to the city and the workings. I also have a really deep sense of the importance of Sitka as a community and a lifestyle here for the residents. And I know that the summer is very important to the residents that live here year-round. And I really believe we need to find a good balance. I've watched Juneau, I've watched Ketchikan, I've watched Skagway, I've watched all these communities over the years go through their changes with tourism, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned for Sitka. I know we need it, but I think it's really important to find a balance. And I would like to be part of that. If I'm not, that's fine. There's qualified people, and my voice has been heard. But I do represent a broad section of the community, and I listen to people, and I have a lot of perspective. But either way, it's fine with me. It's going to be a very big task. There's just no doubt about that. Good luck to whomever. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Ral West, and I probably have not met most of you. I've lived in Sitka for 20 years, but my real claim to fame is that I've been involved in Alaska tourism for over 40 years. I grew up in the industry, starting in Seattle, working for West Tours, Princess Tours, Travel Alaska Tours. My father's known as the father of Alaska tourism, Chuck West. So I chose Sitka as my home. Well, my husband and I did. 20 years ago, after living for over 20 years in Anchorage. and we love it here. This community has just totally taken our hearts. And so much so that we're in the process of building a new home on Halibut Point Road, and hopefully we'll be moving into that soon, and we're going to call that Forever Sitka, because this is our home forever. The reason I applied for this task force is that I thought, gosh, tourism task force, who knows tourism better than I? Now, I might not be as an involved community member as many of the others, and there are some wonderfully qualified people here, but I thought I just want to be able to offer my years of expertise in tourism, and as a business person, we've owned many businesses, and we have a broad perspective on business. We currently invest in real estate all over the country, so it's just a broader view, perhaps, than others would bring to this position. But again, the choice is obviously up to you, and you have lots of qualified people to choose from. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Rich McClear. First of all, you've got a lot of good candidates, and I'm really happy to see that. And if I'm not appointed, I'm very good at making my voice heard, so that's not going to be a problem. But the reason I put my name forward is because, well, my grandfather came to America working on a ship as a steward. He met a woman in New York and got married. All my life, I was in that industry through my grandfather. I learned a lot about ships. I followed the industry my whole life. And recently, I've been following what other communities are doing to try and look at the tourism situation. I looked at the memorandums of understanding that Bar Harbor, Maine and Juneau have come up with. I've looked at the ordinances that Bar Harbor and Portland and Key West have tried to pass. I've looked at some of the controversies in Cove, Ireland and Bora Bora. All these communities are facing the same issue. How do we preserve the essential nature of our community while having business flourish? And because I've looked at this, I thought maybe I could bring some of that experience to Sitka, as well as my experience as a decade on the Sitka Economic Development Commission, trying to look at the economic development of Sitka. So that's why I applied. But as I said, you've got an awful lot of good candidates here, and I know you're just going to make a good choice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
I'm Larry Edwards. My application was certainly lengthy, so I won't take more of your time now other than to say that I feel I'm capable of working all 5 of the topics in the directive and the resolution, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have when the time comes. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the assembly for discussion. If any member would like to call up an applicant.
Well, when we got our packets, we kind of zeroed in on this one. I knew it was going to be a tough one. And it's hard for me because I can safely say pretty close friends with a couple people on here and good acquaintances with a few more. So no matter what, I'm not going to pick somebody, or I'm not going to vote for somebody who I wish I could. But it's a nice group again. It's a very nice group. And again, we're in a bit of a win-win. But, you know, and we, of course we need to follow what the ordinance says, so we can only pick 2. You know, I guess there's nothing to say that if the commission itself decides it wants more members, it sure can, but can ask. But again, I strongly suspect that there'll be a fair amount of, maybe a little more than some of the other commissions kind of churn on this one, as the nature of the beast, people moving in and out of town and people who are busy. So, you know, watch this space. I'm sure there'll be more opportunities. I think it's nice to see who applied, because when we were, as a group, forming this commission, we use the word balance a lot. And I think, you know, we've got some industry-specific seats on here, and I think everybody here, everybody on this list at least, I suspect is going to hold the people who are in the industry to task if necessary. I don't think there's any doubt there. I'm hesitant to say who I'm thinking right now, but I mean, I have to say I sat across the table from Phyllis for too long not to respect her and her ability. She was always able to think things through and find consensus on the assembly, when possible, on the assembly. So, but honestly, we've got a lot of really good people here, and I will be a little bit surprised if it doesn't take a few rounds of voting to get through this. So, sorry to ramble.
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, again, great group of applicants. I had to go through the applications a couple times, picking out little tidbits from each one that I really liked. And yeah, I think this is a really good group, balanced group, I felt like. So yeah, again, I think we got a really good group to choose from. And I kind of echo Tor that this may take a couple rounds. So yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, once again, spoiled for choice, and yeah, I mean, this, I also went through these a couple of times and totally impressed. And so, yeah, I'm looking for balance on our group here, and I think any of these voices, from what I've seen so far, will be a good counterpoint to any sense of the industry being in charge.
Okay.
Okay, huge thanks to the community for coming forward with this. This is a very valuable thing that so many people want to share their voice and share their input and be involved in the perpetually making of Sitka the place that we all want to be. So thank you. The applications, it's really hard. And so I went through the applications a few times and then also kind of cross-checked with the directives that we had listed to really see background, just try to get something to kind of weed people out, because I needed some additional rubric of sorts to go at this. And if I'm the last one, I think I'm trying to invite people up to answer questions
Yeah,
too.
go ahead and feel free to call someone out.
I don't want to make this too long.
It's fine, it's an important.
Apologies. The only person we haven't heard from is Jerry Jacobs. So if you wouldn't mind coming up and I'll ask just a few questions there. Mm-hmm.
You push it back again.
It should be a green light, shouldn't it? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming up. I appreciate you being here and you submitting your application and your letter as well. Your years in the downtown business corridor, dock service, understanding the logistics, how we move people, move things. If you're talking about the three names of Petro, that was a fun little history lesson for me. And just your amount of time in town, which aspect of this really spurred you to want to participate?
Well, it's been mentioned before, and I'll go there again, that, there's pre-selected seats, 7 out of 9. I was afraid that there might not be anybody who, the perspective of a person who just wants to live here and, share this place with anybody who wants to come, is going to be missed if I didn't put in my application. I don't think I'll be sorry if you don't pick me, because you have some very qualified people, but
that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Sitka's a great place to live, and the amount of qualified people is a big representation of that. Thank you, Jerry.
Anybody else? While you're calling your next person up, so I have to make an adjustment. Go ahead.
That was my dad.
That's it? Really? I just wanted to make an adjustment there because I was concerned that people listening might not be able to hear people who are talking. Okay, so no one else wants to call anyone up? Chris? Okay. Is there any final comments on this? I don't think there are. I'm just going to say I kind of reflect the same thing that everyone says. We're blessed with a variety of choices here. Something I did fail to mention at the very beginning when we started all this was thank you everyone for applying. It's not easy to put your name in and put yourself out there in any way, and I appreciate everyone applying. Thank you very much. Sarah, would you like to do this process?
All right, so nominations for the 2 community at-large seats are Larry Edwards, Phyllis Hackett, Jerry Jacobs, Rich McClear, Ron Retta, and Rel West. So when I call your name, if you can state the 2 individuals of your choice. Let's see, Mr. Mosier.
Say Larry Edwards and Jerry Jacobs.
Mr. Yestad.
Phyllis Hackett and Rich McClear.
Mr. Pike.
Phyllis Hackett and Rich McClear.
Ms. Carlson.
Phyllis Hackett and Jerry Jacobs.
And Mr. Christensen.
Phyllis.
Okay, so in that first round, Phyllis received 4 votes. So that's 1 seat. So we'll go for round 2 for the 2nd seat. So on this one, you'll be indicating 1 individual. Mr. Mosier?
Rich McClear.
Mr. Yestad?
Rich McClear.
Mr. Pike?
Rich McClear.
Ms. Carlson?
Jerry Jacobs.
And Mr. Christensen?
Tempted to vote for something completely different. Rich.
All right, so Rich received 4 votes on that round. So our 2, well, I'll just recap all of the appointed individuals. Let's see, so we have Camille Ferguson for the Sitka Tribe of Alaska seat, Scott Wagner for the Port and Harbor seat, Barb Bingham for Sustainability Commission seat, Jeremy Plank for Tours and Attractions, Chris McGraw for Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal, Cambria Holmes for the Business and General seat, Jim Mitchner for the Downtown Business Corridor, and then for the 2 at-large seats, Phyllis Hackett and Rich McClear. And so for everyone, I wanted to remind folks that the Assembly is having a joint work session with the task force at 6 p.m. on Thursday in this room. And
will you be emailing them all these information?
Yes, I've already let them know that this was coming. But for all of those appointed, our office will be in touch with you tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. Let's take a 5-minute break. Let's get So let us reconvene, or just begin again. We're moving on to item E, under unfinished business. Can I have a motion, please? Sorry, it's fine.
I move to approve ordinance 2023-5 on second and final reading, amending the Title II Administration, Chapter 2.40 Elections of the Sitka General Code by updating Section 2.40.095 Candidate Biographical Information and repealing and replacing Section 2.40.190 6. VI, I think Roman numeral 6, right? Absentee and advanced balloting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment on the item?
Good evening, Richard Wayne. As I said at the last meeting when this was brought up, anyone who cannot meet a simple deadline, such as a biography, an advocacy statement, and a photo, should probably not be running for office. These are very simple requirements, and I know I've heard from somebody we're probably the only one in the state that does it, but the very fact that we do it is, I think, is telling. And so I think that one is silly. Again, simple deadline, to me that's the big test. Can't meet it, don't run. And the other one is, I'm kind of old-fashioned about elections, maybe a small window for absentee ballots, but same day and ID is probably the best way to go, with paper ballots, by the way, and not these Dominion machines, which we have been using. So we have a small voting population. There's no reason for any of this to take any time at all. They can be counted out pretty rapidly. And I know Sarah does a splendid job as the overseer of the elections here in the city. So again, can't meet a deadline, don't run. I like a small window for elections, but thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else public comment on this item? Seeing none, bring it back to the assembly. Any discussion?
I just would like to again thank Sarah for keeping things organized and keeping the process running smoothly. And I appreciate. I think we want to remove as many barriers to voting as possible, and I think we're doing that. I think we're at an appropriate space. I mean, where if they want to put their bio up on the website, great. If they don't, I think they're hurting their chances. Maybe people don't really, I don't know how many people really look at it, but I think this finds a nice balance. So thank you, Sarah.
JJ, did you hear something? Okay. Go ahead.
Anything to help people along the way is beneficial. The diversity, equity, inclusion movements state that very rapidly. Like as much as we can do to help without being unfair, it's valuable. And with allowing people multiple ways to vote, as a busy person myself, I think people of my generation would really benefit from a window of voting. It's helpful and it increases turnout, and it's a good thing. So thank you, Sarah, for bringing this forward in a timely manner.
Chris, do you have anything?
I really don't have any problem with this. I think Tor brings up a good point. If someone doesn't want to give their biographical information, yeah, I mean, it should be a requirement, but, I don't have a problem with it not being a requirement. And if they don't, it's less likely that they're going to be elected. And then, with the way early voting is, with the way some of our businesses are in this community, fishermen, I did find that pretty nice, to have kind of a week of voting almost. I think a lot of fishermen took advantage of that, this last election, and, yeah, I think it works out great, so, yeah, I'm in support.
Thank you, Chris. And likewise, I'll just say that I share the opinions of the comments already made. It's appropriate and helpful, and thank you, Sarah, for putting this together. One other comment, Sarah, roll call.
All right, on the motion to approve ordinance 2023-05 on second and final reading, Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
And Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0 on second and final reading.
This moves us on to item F. This is a discussion, direction, decision on the City and Borough of Sitka emergency procurement procedures. I believe Melissa Haley and Tori Fleming, can you come up to give us a little intro?
Good evening, Melissa Haley, Finance Director. So this, we've been talking about for a while. We've been talking about this through the budget process because we've been working on our procurement procedures manual update. And part of what we have needed is to address procedures around emergency procurements. And I've kind of in the handout, I've outlined what the problem is and what the proposed solution is. But what it comes down to is when we're in an emergency situation, and we're not talking about an emergency like a tsunami or a landslide. This is a water break or a lift station failure where we need to move quickly, but there's not necessarily lives at stake. What the core of the problem is that we can't anticipate those emergencies, and in the past we have not had appropriations which we can draw upon. Code requires that the administrator have an appropriation to be able to spend. So you can see, and we kind of outlined the example of the Thompson lift station where we actually had sewer flowing into the ocean. And that was clearly a very urgent situation. We had to act immediately. And so what we are trying to accomplish with the procedure we've outlined is a process where we are able to use an existing appropriation. So in our FY24 budget, we have a couple appropriations. One in the general fund that can really be used anywhere in the organization. That would be a total of $500,000. And then we have two for water and wastewater in smaller amounts. Just in water and wastewater, we've been seeing more breaks there. And then what we have done is we've outlined a process where the administrator can move forward and kind of temporarily use these appropriations for that immediate need with the concurrence of both me and whatever department director is impacted. So kind of with the agreement of the three of us, we would say, yes, this is one of these emergency situations, after which the assembly would be informed. We would also, as quickly as possible, move to get a supplemental appropriation of the correct flavor. Usually it's capital because even though it's a repair, it's often extending the life of the asset. And so at that point, the assembly would be informed, and then we would have a new appropriation specifying the project put in place as quickly as we can get. The other thing is that the first thing we're going to do is see if we have time to come forward with a supplemental appropriation and not use the emergency repair fund. So that's the overview.
Did Tori, do you have anything? So feel free.
I guess my question is, do we need an ordinance to make this happen, or just say we're fine with it? Brian's not here.
The procedure, it obviously, if we had something happen between now and July 1st, we wouldn't be able to use this. But the appropriation would be there once that budget is passed.
So in a way, this is more informational than anything else.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'll point out in this packet, it talks about 3.16020, the limitation on an administrator's authority. And what Melissa's getting at is in the FY24 budget, the appropriation is there as part of the budget approval process. So correct that we could not use this process prior to July 1st, but during our budget talks, one of the concerns was what would be the structure around this, what would be the procedures, so it's not just, as someone said, a blank check that the administrator has the ability to use anytime they want. So we're trying to explain here that it's basically a 3-person concurrence to say that it is an emergency and then come forward at the next available meeting, even if we have to call a special meeting to get that capital appropriation place. Right?
Yeah, as soon as we can, this would just give us the ability, if we need to get a contractor on site, it would give us the ability to do that without breaking code.
Just real quick, finish my thought and then be out of here. But it occurs to me when I was reading this and we were talking about it, that almost, actually by definition, we can't know when emergencies are going to come because that's the definition of an emergency. And I like this. I mean, I remember we were talking about it during the budget. And it doesn't, we don't, I thank you guys for kind of laying out what the procedure is going to be. But I think this is long overdue because, when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and something breaks, I don't want to come to an emergency meeting at 8 that morning. What needs to get going on now. So thank you guys for putting together a reasonable procedure.
I'm less comfortable with this because I don't know that I think that's enough oversight. So I think including someone from this body as part of that chain of who says it's time to do that, the mayor, the deputy mayor, whoever we want to put on there, I think is part of that process. And I think I'll only be comfortable if that's part of it. So I think not only the 3 people that you're talking about, but I think you need to include someone from this body on there as an oversight. And I'm thinking about the long term, not the short term. Like right now, I would not have concerns about anybody making those sort of decisions. However, I don't want to set it up so that down the road people are going to run into trouble with it. So, I mean, I'd be more comfortable with the mayor, deputy mayor being involved. I mean, 3 o'clock in the morning, if I'm on the list, call me up and we'll talk, And I'm not going to say no, but that doesn't include someone else in the process. So I think for me, that's going to need to be part of that.
Thank you, Jim. I kind of share that concern that Tim has. I've been trying to think of a way to handle this, but before I speak about my concerns, Chris or JJ, did you want to speak? Chris is raising his hand. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, actually, I think Tim did bring up a good point there. I do like that idea, and I think he is right. Currently, I wouldn't have any problems with the 3, but for trying to deal with potential scenarios down the line, maybe someone from the body would be a good person to also be included. But I did have, I like this general idea of being able to address emergencies quickly when they arise. And I know that we were using the lift station as an example. How has that been handled in the past? Like when the lift station did fail, were we not able to respond as quickly as we would have liked because we were waiting for financial appropriations, or how did that go?
Go ahead, John.
The way we were able to work through the lift station with the sewage issue is that we had on contract work that was pending for that lift station. So we were able to, I will say, stretch the scope a bit on that contract since it was the same contractor who was going to be doing that work. It just, we had to jump into it much earlier But we still ultimately had to come back to the assembly with some an informational aspect of that project. And I would like to bring up something else very quickly, since this discussion is happening, and if you need me to just wait until we get to the part, I can. But I think we're starting to tread into a bit of a dangerous territory with an approval level falling on the assembly or individual members of the assembly. The assembly has to speak as a body, and not one person can have any authority to approve or disapprove something. So knowing that the assembly would have to speak as a body, they speak as a body through the appropriation and through the budget process. And if we were to put individual members on this, we frankly might as well just go back to the typical come forward with an appropriation when something needs to happen.
If I can speak to that real quick, it wouldn't. Thank you for bringing that up, Jim. That's a good point. I would see it more as informational, and I think the mayor is the one who should be woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, by the way, or whoever's next on the list in town. And more just letting them know rather than making a decision, because then if he or she thinks, okay, this is the wrong decision, the next assembly meeting is no more than 2 weeks away. And so they can bring it up or get it on the agenda, you know.
Or they can do an emergency.
Or they can do an emergency meeting. But if we don't know about it till a week later, that's hard. So it's more, I wouldn't say, you're right, they can't say, yes, I approve this, but if they know about it, they can do something about it if they don't think, they'll know right away. You know, and I suspect it would be like, oh yeah, that's nice to know, I'm going back to sleep. But, you know, that way, and you would do this anyway, and every administrator I've worked with has done the same thing. I'm sure there would be an email sitting in everybody's box when we woke up saying, hey, this happened. But if there was a procedure that you're going to let the mayor know right away, then he or she can do something about it if they need to. And so it's not like, it's not giving the okay, but it's definitely given a new, does that make sense?
No, what it does is it gives the mayor the opportunity, because the mayor can call an emergency meeting on their own. Like, if I wanted to call an emergency meeting, I think I would have to have 4 or 5 members to agree to that. The mayor can do it on his or her own. So if the mayor is required to be at least told about it, if we, like I said, I have absolutely no problem with you, John, or the people in this chain right now, but we have to make a decision based on people we don't know. And we don't know, so we don't know how much we trust. So if the mayor's required to be notified, then if he or she feels this is way off, they can call an emergency meeting and just put the kibosh on it. I mean, I don't know if that's possible. That would make me feel more comfortable. Go ahead, Melissa.
Could I propose that we add language that upon obtaining the agreement of the 3 people here, that the mayor is informed? So that'd be under A of this section. Would that increase the comfort level?
Hold on a second.
The very last page of the slideshow down at the bottom left.
Okay, Melissa, say that again. Item, which one, A, B, or C?
Under A, so it would really be part of that first section. So as soon as there was concurrence of the administrator, finance director, and department head, then the mayor would be informed.
Yeah.
So, and that would be kind of a step before even the whole assembly.
Yeah, that's perfect. That is a protection that makes me feel comfortable. Does any other assembly members, what do you think about that?
I mean, that's a step in the right direction. I'm still hesitant about this whole, I'm not hesitant about the need to do something like this, but I'm hesitant about the oversight. And I'm hesitant about it down the road being a concern or issue with not, with people making emergencies out of something that isn't. And so they have a pet project they want to get done, and so, oh, there we go. And again, this is something I'll talk about at the moment, but if we set this up, this is something that goes forward, then we need to make sure that we don't end up eventually comes to an appropriation from this body, but, you know, I'm just still have some of those concerns, so. I'll just think about what you're saying, and see what I think about it.
JJ or Chris, did you have any thoughts on that kind of idea? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, you know, John brings up a good point there. So, you know, maybe just the mayor being advised is what we'll have to do. I don't have a problem with that. I think it is a good checks and balance measure in this. So I would be okay with that.
JJ?
I think that's a valuable add. The system's working for that discussion direction. Question on, I think I've heard there'd be money set aside for water, is there anything for roads in that, or what's?
So the general fund will have 500,000, so if there was something serious happening with the general fund asset, or the general fund appropriation could be used temporarily for another fund. So there's 500,000, and I believe it was 200 and 200 each for water and wastewater.
So that's the primary infrastructural thing that's kind of life expectancy right now, but farmers could get something if something happened. Thank you.
Again, just a quick point in that I think we've all said that we're pretty comfortable with the current staff we have. In order, when we go through the budget every year, or the assembly does, they will have to approve this, just like we did. So that if that situation were not the case, the assembly has to look at it every year and say, yeah, we're not, and especially if something happened that they weren't really happy about the previous year, they can say, yeah, no, we're not going to have that fund. Real easily, because we have to look at it every single year as part of the budget. So again, I appreciate Tim bringing that up, because I like the idea of the mayor being involved, and because every mayor I've served with would have been all over that if he or she didn't feel like it was truly appropriate, and we would have had that special meeting at 8 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah, I mean, that idea is just a new, fresh one, but I think I like it. I agree that no member, we speak as one. We don't run around giving approvals to things or disapprovals on our own, including the mayor. I do believe that we need to have a more efficient way of dealing with emergencies. I also believe that we're all human beings, and you know, I do trust the current staff, but it could be in the future where someone is hired that we do not know is not quite a person of integrity, and you know, that kind of money could be used, you know, in a not helpful way, possibly illegally. So having the mayor being notified, the three make the decision, you know, this is what we need to do, and just give the mayor a heads up, so that, and make that a requirement, then if the mayor, say 10 years from now, the mayor does not agree, you know, they can't say, well, don't do it, but he or she can call a meeting the next day or whenever and say, this is what's going on, the public will be informed, and we could just put that, stop on that right away before the money's actually spent. So I'm okay with this. Sarah, can you kind of give us some help here, how this is going to play out?
I guess I feel more comfortable if we had a motion and voted on that piece.
Okay, so this will be to approve of the procedures. We're not changing code at all.
Correct. And I'm talking just about the addition of notifying the mayor.
Well, that plus approving this
Right.
So we already approved this, actually, in the budget process.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, tour was your idea?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure we need to, but it's there for there. Give me a sec. All right, I move to add the requirement to notify the mayor anytime an emergency procedure protocol is activated. Or add the requirement to notify the mayor anytime the emergency procedure is activated, protocol is activated. Does that work, Sarah?
It does.
Thank you.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. So motion's been made in the second. Open this up to public comment.
Richard Wayne. Robert's Rules is something that's very important, and believe it or not, the Assembly can authorize a single member or members to speak at the behest of the Assembly, the governing body. I think it is not anything that you're asking a member to do, ad hoc. This is Robert's Rules while you're making this motion, that you have to authorize an individual, and I think you should probably put in a second if you have an amendment, so have the mayor and vice mayor there, because you don't know what is going to happen. And the bottom line is, you need this motion, and in the past, these kind of emergency appropriations, there was one glitch, and that is, there was an incident at the Sawmill Creek by the bridge where there was a pipe bust, and it was leaking, and it's like bankruptcy. It's slow, and then all of a sudden, and there was a real issue that came up a few years ago because all of a sudden they declared it an emergency, and they didn't have to go to RFPs or doing anything when they knew about the leak for an extended period of time. And you have to understand about when you declare an emergency, you really don't have to go through acquisition. And I think that there needs to be safeguards when you declare an emergency, that the proof is in the pudding, like the lift station or other things, that this is indeed an emergency, because there's been other aspects which have been not appropriately done, at least in contracting. And this is historical, and I have the receipts. So I think it's great. I think Mr. Pike's idea is most excellent by keeping the Assembly in the loop. And this motion was absolutely appropriate, because if you didn't do this motion, you would be making an authorization which was not valid. So thank you for making the motion, and Godspeed.
Anyone else? Okay. Back to the Assembly. Anyone has any last
Just a
questions?
question for Sarah. So when we say mayor, does that automatically fall to the deputy mayor if the mayor's out of town, or the vice deputy mayor?
Yes.
That's what I thought. So,
Yeah, I don't think you need to make any motion.
yeah, and so again, this, I think the fact that the mayor or the acting mayor has the power to call a meeting directly makes it, gives us some teeth, because that's one of the few powers the mayor has in our system. And that's a pretty powerful hammer. I mean, because if the mayor doesn't feel like it's really an emergency, or doesn't feel like it's appropriate, he can get us together. All he has to do is get four of us. So,
the mayor can call.
no, I mean, people in town, so I meant,
Oh,
there.
okay.
But maybe we can't get past the street that's broken. So, but anyway, I'm comfortable with this, and I appreciate Tim for bringing up the concept.
Well, I'm a big fan, sort of in general, of not putting people in the place of being able to make choices that aren't the best ones that they could make. So So that's, I guess, it's kind of interesting listening to the ideas that we've had about what could go wrong and how those would speak to the public as to the problems with government, so to speak, that they already kind of feel we have. So, I'll try this for a year and see how this goes, and see kind of how this plays out and what kind of things we come up with and what issues we run into and how we need to modify this going forward. Because I don't disagree with the need to act quickly in circumstances where we don't need to go through a meeting to make sure that people can fix something that's really badly needed and broken. So, but I just don't want to put it in a circumstance where people have the opportunity to make choices that are not good.
Agreed. There's no final comments. Sarah, roll call.
And a motion to add the requirement that anytime the emergency procedure protocol is activated, that the mayor is notified. Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
And Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
And motion passes 5-0.
Okay, this brings us to item G.
I move to approve resolution 2023-16 on first and final reading, authorize an application to the fiscal year 2023 Port Security Grant Program.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Before we go to public comment, Stan is going to introduce the item.
Good evening, Stan Elias, Harbor Master. So we have an opportunity for grant funding through the Port Security Grant Program. And my plans are to purchase 2 cameras, have those cameras installed down in Elias Harbor. These cameras will monitor foot traffic as well as vessel traffic. I got for $37,500 from the feds. Of course, there was a match involved. So the Harbor Fund would cover $12,500 of that. These are expensive, the cameras are expensive, but the huge expense is the actual installation and transmitting that signal back to the server. That's the huge expense right there.
Okay. So if you want to have a seat, we'll go to public comment, and then if we have any questions, we'll call you. Okay. Thank you, Stan. Public comment?
Good evening, my name is Richard Ween. This is item G, authorizing application for 2023 for the Port Security program, and it has to do with obtaining 2 cameras. The cost of this is $50,000, and it's a 75/25, so that's the feds will pay 37.5K, and we will pay 12.5K. Which is good. Now, a couple of things about this is that within the memo, it has to protect infrastructure from acts of terrorism, major disasters, and emergencies, and also because of, where is that? It was a notation there about the increased vandalism, cost sharing to add 2 more cameras secondary to vandalism and thefts. And I know that there have been, issues. I've heard people complain to me about thefts on the docks from their boats. And I know that there has been vandalism, which has cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars. My question is, this is basically for Eliason and Thompson Harbors. There are 2 cameras. Now, I know that if you can't identify someone, I do not know what the pixel rate and how you can potentially, identify faces. I've seen security footage sometimes where you just see the figure doing something wrong, and that becomes a big deal. I think that port security is important, and 2 cameras, I don't know whether is it enough. But the bottom line is, can you identify what's going on? You certainly could identify a boat, but could you identify an individual who isn't masked and so forth? So the question that I always have is, what happens if we don't get this? Is this important enough that the city will pony out the 50? That's number one. And number two is, do we need more cameras in order to ensure real port safety? So, I'm happy that if they want to give us money, meaning the federal government, through the taxpayers, that sounds good to me. But the question is, do we need more, and are these adequate technical cameras which will help identify perpetrators? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, back to the assembly for discussion. Feel free to call, stand if you have any questions. Not seeing any. Go ahead.
One quick question, Stan. One quick question. Thank you. Will these cameras be connected to the police department
Yes.
system?
Yes, that's correct. I'm just going to say I think this is appropriate. The share, CBS share, wouldn't be, it's $12,500. I think it'd be worth the value. We need more cameras up there, and it makes a lot of spaces. I'm not seeing anyone else really wanting to speak. Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, I know in general, a licensed one of our older harbor systems, so I don't think it has nearly as many cameras as, say, Crescent, since it's one of our newest harbors. But, the cameras in our harbor systems have definitely proven useful over the years. It helped with the whole Crescent dock fire that we had. I've even had to ask Stan to look at some footage before with suspected foul play. So I think this is definitely a good thing. I think it'll definitely help harbor staff and just harbor users who may want some footage looked at if foul play has happened on their vessels. So I'll definitely support this.
Okay. All right. No other comment. Thank you, Stan, for bringing this forward.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you do. Last call for comment? Okay. Sarah?
All right, on motion to approve resolution 2023-16 on first and final reading, Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
And Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0 on first and final reading.
Okay, that brings us to item H.
I move to approve resolution 2023-18 on first and final reading and authorizing the municipal administrator to apply for the National Renewable Energy Laboratories Energy Transition Initiative Partnership Project.
Second. I'm allowed to second, so I just did it. Bree, I believe, is going to speak on this. She's our new sustainability coordinator.
Good evening, Assembly. I'm Bree Gable, the Sustainability Coordinator. Actually almost a month to the day, you all approved the Sustainability Commission's goals, the first of which was develop a community renewable energy strategy. And in that work plan, the Commission suggested applying to this technical assistance project or program. This is technical assistance, so it's not a grant, there's no money being exchanged. We are in a very unique position where the electric department applied in 2021 and got that technical assistance. So we have a very large and robust data set of our options as far as renewable energy goes. So the goal of this particular round is taking that information and actually figuring out the direction we kind of want to go, get some community input, get some input from the electric department as well, and building upon that data set, because that's what we need. We need to know kind of where we need to head in the future. And yeah, I'm open to questions. It's pretty straightforward as far as I see. The application I did attach is very different looking than last time. The program itself has been pretty heavily revamped to be a little bit more community focused. So that's why it looks very different from the 2021 application. Thank you.
Thank you, Vic. We'll be calling you. Okay, public comment?
This is concerning the authorization of the administrator to apply for a grant from the NREL, and which relates to ETIP. ETIP actually sounds like a vague device, but the important thing here is this is not new. We've had presentations from these individuals in the past. I thought the presentation was nice, but a little weak. I have to tell you that in the memo it says no cost, but all I can say is that that's kind of rubs me a little bit. It does cost because somebody's paying for these individuals' time. And what was also noted in the memo is that where we will pay is through staff time, and time is money, and so it comes out of salaries. The important thing to know is that the several things that they're going to be evaluating, which was mentioned, which would be wind, as far as having wind turbines, they had mentioned previously photoelectric cells, and again, electrolysis. The funny thing is that I think it's insane to even consider turbines here, wind turbines. Again, I mentioned previously, and people must know about damage to avian life. I love my eagle, and I don't know how they taste, but probably taste better than spotted owl, which is actually pretty good. Photoelectric is very marginal, so the only things really left is something like electrolysis. And I've investigated electrolysis, whether it's through ammonia or the storage of hydrogen. And these are very dense kind of things, which will be very costly, which I don't think the city can potentially, unless Mr. Elder would like to explain the costs of these kind of things before we get into it. We're having all these things done, and I don't see anybody's telling us what the cost is. So bottom line is, I read through the application. It's a very simple application. I probably have AI GPT write it, and that would just take a few minutes. But you're going to get something, you think it's for nothing. But the question is, I think there are a few areas where we know where we should go and where we shouldn't go. And part of the decision-making process is understanding how much some of these things should cost. So I know it's going to go forward and the application will be filled, but I don't want to eat raptors. Thank you.
Eric?
Acting Mayor Mosier, Assembly members, staff, public. I want to emphasize to you the urgency I feel going forward. My talking to the electric department people is we're looking at the present rate of growth in our electrical needs. We're looking at 7 years before we're going to start using diesel. I think you all know that. 7 years. A major project to produce new energy, electric energy or hydrogen energy, we're looking at 10 to 20 years. Folks, I don't sense the urgency, and I go to the Sustainable Commission and they get it, they're doing excellent work, but I'm involved. I've converted to 2 electric cars, electric heat pumps, and I'm involved in an E-tip project to convert my boat to diesel electric. I'm doing my best here. And because I sense the urgency. And if I'm going to plead with you to act on this, I need to be acting myself. But go ahead, approve this, but beyond that, please do the reading, the research, because we are genuinely, as I brought to the Fish and Game Advisory Committee over 2.5 years ago, we are in an emergency situation. We need to recognize it, and then we need to take inventory, and these are one of the tools to survive here. So please approve this, but also as we go forward, please hear my sense of urgency for our community, for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, back to the assembly. Again, feel free to call staff up. Anyone? While you guys are thinking about it, I just wanted to point out, kudos to Bree. I am the liaison for the Sustainability Commission. I believe it's been a lot of work on their part, and especially Bree's to bring this here. I believe she has a very sound knowledge of this material and the knowledge of what sources of revenue to search for to assist with these issues and the timing to do it. And so a member in the public said the staff time is required, of course it will, but I believe this aligns with our strategic plan, and we need to find out what we can do. And yes, we will be looking for ways to increase our power capacity in the future. That's very urgent. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. So I will definitely be approving this. Any other comments? Chris? Oh, sorry, Chris raised his hand. Chris, go ahead.
I think we need to at least keep investigating for the future. Because, I keep hearing that we're going to potentially start running out of electricity. So I think we at least need to start looking and being more prepared. And if this is the next step for that, then, I think it's what we need to do. Though I'm not excited for the realities of what they may find.
Okay, JJ, I believe you had.
I just appreciate the timeliness. The sustainability coordinator has been really active in charging and everything that she's done. 1 month ago, bringing this forward, this was the first goal item, and we were a little bit like hesitant. You've really taken on a lot of goals here, but to see how effective and efficient you are bringing them forward, it has great ability to gain confidence. Thank you.
Tim, anything? Okay. Sarah, roll call.
Okay, on the motion to approve Resolution 2023-18 on first and final reading, Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
And Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0.
So let's take a 5-minute break. You never know.
My pitcher is empty. So Tim, I heard you say
The program, and it hasn't been determined yet what the 2023 appropriations will be, but for FY22, the Department of Energy distributed $13.5 million in incentive payments to 55 hydroelectric facilities. So that ranged from anywhere from $3,000 to $1 million. As noted in the memo, the particular application, this one is due May 8th. It's for electricity generated and sold in the calendar year of 21 and 22, and it's capped at us receiving $2 million.
So that's $1 million for each calendar year, subject to the availability of funds, with our intent is to also apply for calendar year 23, 24, and 25. Between 21 and 22, Blue Lake supplied 60 to 65% of Sitka's load. In 2021, Blue Lake produced a little over 8.6 million kilowatts, and in 22, it produced approximately 73.8. These are the amounts that we will be requesting for payment through this program. So we maxed out at that 100, at the million, with the incentive payment calculated at the minimum rate of 0.018 cents per kilowatt hour. As stated in the fiscal note, the funds received will be allocated to the electric enterprise fund and will come back before the assembly on the use of funds. We have not heard when we will know if we are awarded, and the Department of Energy states once the application period closes, which is May 8th, they will review the applications and notify the applicants of their eligibility. So following the submission of an application, they will complete an initial review to consider and for the completeness, and then may request additional information. So there's opportunity for them to seek more information after we submit our original application, and there's also an appeal process. So Bree and Scott are in the audience as well for technical questions.
Thank you, Melissa. Public comment?
Good evening, Richard Ween. I think this is a wonderful opportunity. And if we could get the money, I think it is absolutely great. I think it's interesting that there's under $25 million, which has been given, which when you think about the trillions that have been distributed, this isn't a whole heck of a lot of money, and $51 million has already been distributed. And it's interesting that I'm glad the congressional folks told us about it for this year, but it would have been nice to have been in there last year as well. We capped out at $1 million, but our calculated, if we had unlimited, it would have been $2 million. So we certainly produce enough electricity for that. There are some important things here that to me, now this is rhetorical, and it is philosophical, and it is everything else, that we continually need these types of grants to function at our most basic level. And what happens if we don't get these grants? We have Green Lake, Phase 2, Phase 3. We have Blue Lake. There's the de-water. I'm sure that's a story on why we didn't do the FERC inspection years ago. But what's important here is that you have to figure that we are grant dependent on these kind of things. I certainly hope we get it. You need to put the application into the suite, but I just always have the feeling we're living well beyond our means in a contracting economy. And I can't go into an operating room with my fingers crossed. You gotta have a plan, you gotta know what you're doing, and make it happen. So, good luck, put it in, and I hope we get some money. Remember, only $13 million was passed out over 55 different applications. So it'll be interesting to know what their requirements are. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to the assembly table. Any comments? I don't have any. Okay, Sarah, roll call please.
Right, on the motion to approve the administrator to apply to the U.S. Department of Energy Grid Deployment Office Section 242 Hydroelectric Production Incentive Program. Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
And Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0.
Item J. You know what? I'll make the motion.
Okay, I mean, I'll do it if you want me to.
No, municipal administrator to apply to the Alaska Department of Health's Healthy and Equitable Communities Round 2 funding for supplementing the Crescent Harbor High-Low Dock Ned Shed project.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Melissa will give an introduction for this.
Melissa Henshaw, Public and Government Relations Director. So the background to this funding opportunity begins with the Alaska Municipal League. They held a special presentation on March 29th regarding this program. It's the Alaska Department of Health's Round 2 of the Healthy and Equitable Communities Memorandum of Agreements. The funding can be used for a wide variety of projects that address health needs. As the memo states, $9 million was set aside in support of creating healthy and equitable communities around the state. So of the $9 million, Sitka has almost $134,000 set aside. It's a little pot of funding, we just need to go after it. So we strategized in finding a good fit for this funding because of the challenge of the short timeline to apply from knowing about it in March and it was due today. So we had less than a month when we learned about it and a short timeline to expend the funds, which is challenging. So we need to expend the funds by May 31st of 2024. Though this funding is tied to the idea of supporting local coalitions to prevent and address COVID-19 among the underserved, those at higher risk for COVID-19 related illnesses and death, this funding is very broad. So we chose the Crescent Harbor High-Low Dock Net Shed for this funding by looking at what projects that we could fit into this program that were shovel-ready, approved in the budget, and had a project charter through the working capital execution plan so that we could put the $134,000 towards something quickly that could benefit the community. We felt that the net shed was a good fit as this project was starting now with the notice of intent to proceed. It had an unfunded balance of $244,000 and it fit the goals of the program, which include infrastructure support for COVID-19 or future pandemic prevention and control among populations that are at a higher risk or underserved by benefiting the community equitably, the ability to rent this space for a really low cost. And it also benefited the community that is rentable for nonprofits for free, as well as it's an outdoor, yet covered COVID-19 friendly space. It also fits the program goal of improving spaces in the community where people live, learn, work, and play, with a greater opportunity for better health outcomes, noting that this facility is an excellent outdoor space made available during the pandemic. It was in order for people to gather, yet social distance and remain protected from the weather. So we used this space kind of coming back from the pandemic where people were able to at least gather even though we weren't going inside and indoors. So the application deadline has actually moved into May 2nd. They extended it, but still short time frame. So.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. Public comment?
Richard Wien here speaking. This is actually in our handout. It says Crescent Harbor High-Low Dock. It's high-load dock, and actually it sounds similar to Texas Hold'em high-low. The important thing here is I'm very happy that we have these grant opportunities, and it will be for up to $133,774, which will help us bring the amount, our unfunded balance of $244,000 down. The important thing is this is a $1.5 million project, but it's kind of interesting in that this has to do with the health and well-being and equity within the community. And when I read the memo, and I hope they bite on this, that the high load shed is actually kind of a working dock where people are using it for industrial purposes. And I think it was I love creativity and that they wove this into a, what can I say, infrastructure support for COVID-19 or future pandemic prevention and control among populations that are higher risk and underserved. Well, that's what the grant is for. So I hope that when this is done, that it will really, truly be a highly used community space, even though it's competing with the fishermen. But you have to read the memo, and it seems like a stretch, but if it works, sounds good to me. But it needs to be used for the community if you're going to honestly accept this money. So, thank you.
Okay. There's no one else in the audience except our staff, so we'll move to Sunday deliberation.
You know, Melissa's position is fairly new, and we said go out and find things like this. And so it's a little bit of an aside, but this is why we hired her. And she's doing it, which is nice. So thank you. I know we're seeing a lot of these grant applications, and that's just, we're not going to get every one. That's fine. But if we don't ask, we won't get. And it's really nice because that project is kind of, there's a lot of things on the list of projects, and so if we get this 133 change, that makes one more project that much more chance of happening. So I will enthusiastically vote yes on this, and we'll see what happens. But I also fully expect to continue to see these from you, Melissa. And if you want to bring them forward every meeting, that's just fine. So thank you.
Tim?
I was just going to say, I think it already is a multi-purpose space. That's where my kids learn to ride bikes on rainy days.
Chris?
Yeah, no, it definitely is a community asset, a piece of infrastructure. I know it's called the net shed, and it is used by fishermen, but generally a month out of the year, maybe a month and a half. The rest of the time, it is a community piece of infrastructure that was used during COVID time for being outside and spacing. So I do feel as though this application is being used properly. So I think it's a good thing, and I support it.
Anyone else? I also support this, and yes, thank you, Melissa. Bring as many as you want. I'm okay with it. This is exactly one of the reasons that we hired you, and we really appreciate it. We need to keep going for it. Sarah, roll call.
On the motion to authorize the municipal administrator to apply to the Alaska Department of Health round 2 funding for supplementing the Crescent Harbor High Load Dock Net Shed project. My little list here. Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
And Mr. Yesdad?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-0 on item J.
All right. This is the item K, the last.
Go ahead. I move to approve resolution 2023-17 on first and final reading, rescheduling the 2023 Board of Equalization from May 1 to May 9.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Public comment? Okay, none. Somebody deliberation? I don't see any. Hey, Sarah?
Okay, on the motion to approve resolution 2023-17 on first and final reading, Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mr. Yesdad?
Yes.
And Mr. Pike?
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay. So we're moving on to persons to be heard. This is on public participation on anything on or off the agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes.
this is Richard Wynn. Some of the things that were mentioned previously was that, and I'll semi-quote, looking at a present rate of growth, it will be 7 years before we use diesel. Now that's important because what happened was when I went to the Sitka economic report, we are losing population. We are seasonalizing. Our population is growing older. And all of these things related to the Sitka economic health really kind of speak against growth. Meaning, as a city, I mean, you have to go there, because these are not my words. You have to go to that meeting and just listen to it. So the question, and I've asked it before at this table, who are we doing this for? And what we need to forecast and have some sense of the economics of this moving forward. And maybe it's not such a bad idea to cap some of this growth when we figure out that we can have a balanced community and that we can have moderation in how we approach and do things. And so I don't get the rush. And again, it's, what was that movie? I can't remember the name, but show me the money. You have to show me, when you present these things, you need to present some form of outline of fiscal plan. Is this an appropriate path that we need to take? And sometimes appropriateness has to do with cost. And I'm just not seeing a lot of this. I'm seeing a lot of wishing and hoping and dreaming, and that's a song from my youth. But the thing is that we can't run an economy with this kind of stuff. So it's kind of a sad thing. But let's go with sadder things. Walmart is closing 20 retail locations. But the good thing is they won't be closing Sitka's Walmart. Well, I guess they'll be closing Sitka's McDonald's. Do you think these are any economic indicators? And one funny thing I found in the financial records is that the major cruise lines, including Carnival, Norwegian, Royal, Caribbean, they are all charging mandatory tip on their boats per day. Carnival is $18 per day. Mandatory. So what's funny to me is there's always pushback against each of the passengers ponying up a $5 head tax, which would bring millions of dollars here to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no one else?
Anybody else?
For public comment, goes to reports. The mayor is absent. So, administrator?
A couple things. Right now, our HR office is vacant for at least through the end of this week. So if there's hopefully people out there itching to come work for the city, we've got a lot of openings. If they just email hr@cityofsitka.org, they can contact us with any applications or questions if they're looking for employment. I'd also like to read this statement here. For the public, I've informed most of the assembly, or I have informed the assembly already, but following discussion last Friday and at Mr. Harmon's request, I've reassigned Michael Harmon to the position of the municipal engineer to ensure our capital projects are kept on track and successful in our time with limited engineering staff. Our current project manager will be retiring this Friday, and there are no other engineers in that department. So this change will become effective on May 1st. I've also assigned Mr. Ron Benson as the interim Public Works Director as I advertise and search for a new permanent Public Works Director. And I'd like to just say that Michael's an extremely valued and respected engineer and a loyal and hardworking member of our team. His skills will be critical to ensuring our capital project portfolio, valued over $150 million, stays on track and our projects are seen through to completion. With current and upcoming vacancies, our capital program was at risk of becoming more of an ancillary thought rather than a primary mission within the department. There's simply too much at risk for our capital projects to not be the primary focus of a highly qualified engineer and project manager, which is why Mr. Harmon and I mutually agreed on this path being the most beneficial to the city. I applaud Michael on his request to make this change to bring the best value to the city, and I have no doubt that Michael will continue to produce top-notch results in our engineering program, as he did with countless other projects throughout his 14 years as Public Works Director. Two more quick things. I made a report a few months ago about the traffic signal at Lake and Lincoln, that it was going to be, if it was approved by DOT, it was going to be up and running by May 1st, so that's 6 days from now, and I have not seen any lines being painted or signs out there, or any notices, so we've checked in on that. And maybe I inaccurately made that statement, but that's the history I recollect on the deadline that we were given. So tourists are here, the jaywalkers are already out. I saw a handful of them just this afternoon, so hopefully we can get that signal in soon. And finally, I sent the news out yesterday. Senator Murkowski's office called me last week, and then we got the notification last night that the city of Sitka was approved for a CES request and earmarked for $2 million, and it's through the THUD EDI program. That's their Economic Development Initiative, and that $2 million is for the haul out and shipyard. So we'll see if it makes it in the bill. Thanks.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? About the traffic light, you said you followed up, or what was the response?
I don't have any major updates on it as any more than it's going to be the local DOT team here, and when they have the ability and the capacity to get the project done. But I think the traffic control plan, everything's complete. All the planning side of it is complete. It's just a matter of getting everything noticed and getting the arrows painted in the road, and just getting out there and getting it done.
Thank you. So the attorney is not present. Liaison representatives? See any? I don't have any. Okay, moves to clerk.
Okay, well, as always, we have a number of vacancies on our boards and commissions. If folks are interested, I'll start reading from the bottom of the list this time, mix it up a little bit. We have the Tree and Landscape Committee, Parks and Rec Committee, Local Emergency Planning Committee, Library Commission, Investment Committee, and the Health Needs and Human Services Commission. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, the Assembly has a joint work session with the Tourism Task Force at 6 p.m. on Thursday night.
Okay. Any other reports? Okay, seeing none. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Come soon. Did you tell